Hello and welcome to the Camo Grind, a series where I analyze every weapon in Advanced Warfare to help you complete every camo challenge by giving specific strategies, loadouts, and more, including ranking every weapon variant in order of usefulness based on several factors to give you an idea of what you should use and what you should redeem. I don't, however, just make this stuff up. My advice and opinions are based on thorough testing, in-game coded stats, and of course my own experiences in using these weapons and weapon variants, of which I own many, to complete every marksman challenge and earn every royalty camo. Today's episode is on the remaining 4 SMGs that we haven't covered yet, the SN6, KF5, MP11, and ASM1. It was originally just going to be the SN6, and if you're sitting there wondering why we're covering 4 guns in one video, or if you have questions like why haven't you uploaded anything in 3 weeks? Wow, it really doesn't feel like 3 weeks. Or maybe, why are you making Advanced Warfare videos? Nobody likes that game because clearly I speak for everybody. Well, I encourage you to watch the previous video on the channel being an update video, and that will completely fill you in. Bottom line is that these videos are going to be much faster, the information will be compressed, we're gonna fly through the variant ranking for these guns, not going into as much depth as we used to, because I just want to get the info out there and check every gun off the list before Black Ops 3. So, because there won't be as much information in these videos, because I won't be talking about the gun data unless there's something strange to mention, I encourage you to check out all the spreadsheets in the description if you care about that stuff. My sources have always been in the description since the beginning of time. It's all very well formatted stuff. It wasn't made by me, of course, it's compiled by these guys, and I mainly want to spend time focusing on this ranking here. This spreadsheet was made by me. I'll be giving brief explanations for each positioning here, and if you have questions about why I've ranked things in a certain way, I encourage you to ask and I'll reply and explain myself, but I don't want to make a 40-minute video talking about absolutely everything. Starting with the SN6 here, I think the third variant is the best. It has a damage buff that increases the long-range damage, completely removing the chance for a 6-shot kill, assuming no wall penetration, and it also has a considerable range buff that mainly helps out by increasing your short-range 4-shot kill potential, and the only downside to the weapon is a significant aim-down sight penalty. You'll definitely notice it, but being an SMG, sometimes hipfire is a viable strategy anyway, and the quick draw grip nicely counters that nerf and makes this gun number 1 for me. The hammer is also a good variant, coming in at number 2 because it has the exact same damage buff, but just no range buff, and the only downside is 4 fewer shots in your magazine, which isn't ideal to lose 4 bullets, but that's rarely the reason that you die or don't get a kill if you reload frequently. Finally, in third, I do have the other elite being the money. It would be more appropriate if the elite swapped places, no? Third? Alright, that probably wasn't funny enough to warrant mentioning. The money is pretty good though, there's a bunch of stuff going on. It has a range buff that only affects the long range, and that's actually good because the money doesn't have a damage buff to speak of, so that range buff is going to help delay the 6-shot kill and make it pretty unlikely that you'll ever encounter it, since you really shouldn't be engaging enemies at that 6-shot kill range anyway. It also has a small trade-off of losing 10% hip spread accuracy for a 10% improvement in recoil, which is good in this case in my opinion. You also have an extra reserve magazine thrown in there, which is good if you plan on staying alive with this weapon for a long time, and finally an aim down sight time nerf, which isn't as extreme as the third, but again, a quick draw grip will counter it well, and that's what I'll nearly always be using anyway. And then down here we have some other good variants that you could use, and then some crappy variants that I wouldn't recommend using at all. Overall, the SN6 is usable in this game. It isn't terrible, but it is overshadowed by a lot of other submachine guns and assault rifles for the most part. There's just nothing amazing about it. Now let us cover the KF5. This is the only time I'll take a break to mention the gameplay, but there's a bit of a story behind this. For some reason, I remember this game vividly as the most fun I've ever had playing Advanced Warfare, and not to come off as a hater, but maybe it was the only time I really remember having a great time playing the game. I remember saying out loud to myself when it ended, wow, that was really fun. It was just such a close momentum game. It seemed like both teams were really trying to take the flags. I was really throwing myself on there, and I think I ended the game with 71 kills. The game was a tie, and my KD was honestly nothing special, but it was just fun to play. AW has kept me entertained for longer than it did for most people, with the challenges and the camos and all that, but that was more of a satisfaction that I got from working towards those. It was a passive fun. This momentum game was really fun, and I just found it weird that I remember it so clearly. I don't think I will ever forget this match. The last game I played on the night of Saturday, March 15th, 2015. I wish I could show the entire game, but I'm not planning on talking about the KF5 for 14 minutes. I actually did use some of the gameplay from this game in that recent update video though. Anyway, just wanted to share that little story. The best KF5 variant, I would say, is the KF5 single stack, even though it doesn't look that good in game, and it may not look like much with a damage decrease and 1 fire rate increase, but the supposed +1 fire rate is the same as the +3 on the breakneck. They are both equally fast, which makes this thing very good. And as for the negative damage, that only affects your long range damage going from 6 to 7 shots to kill, which is already terrible, and the long range drop off for the KF5 is pretty far out, so you shouldn't really be engaging enemies at that long range, especially with the crazy increase in fire rate. It would be hard to hit people at that range, so this nerf really shouldn't matter if you just avoid those gunfights. If you're looking for increased fire rate, I would say this is the variant for you. If you're not looking for faster fire rate, perhaps you're looking for the Genuine, another good weapon. It is the only KF5 to increase your damage, and again, it only changes the long range damage, but it makes it a 5-shot kill to match your medium range, which is more reasonable. And when you don't have that crazy fire rate, this could actually be useful, especially because the range nerf on this weapon decreases that long range drop off distance, which would matter, but it doesn't matter at all because your damage is buffed. So you get free long range damage and 10% better recoil to help you hit long range targets, with the only real downside being no optical attachments, which might be a deal breaker for you, but I tend to not use optical attachments on the KF5. I personally don't mind the iron sights, but that's up to you. Finally, in third, we have the KF5 Breakneck, and that's what I'm using in this game. I would still consider it a great gun, even if the single stack overshadows it a bit. You just have to deal with a bit more recoil and some band attachments, but it is still very worthwhile for that extra fire rate. We have some other good variants here. I put the Spanner down here because I'm not a big fan personally, and if you look at the stats, it kind of wrecks your time to kill with that decrease in fire rate. It is the worst KF5 for time to kill, but it is very accurate and easy to use, and some people might like it. You can always give it a try and see what you think. And down here, there are variants that I would not recommend using. Now we move to the MP11. This thing has some great variants. In my opinion, the best being the Goliath, as you might expect. It has a very impressive damage buff, with the only downside being a large hipfire nerf, which is kinda bad for an SMG, but you just have to change your playstyle to accommodate that. Remember that hipfiring won't be as effective as usual. Use a quick draw grip and a grip, and this variant will be very good. Now on the other side of the spectrum, we have the other elite, the MP11 Squeaker, with a crazy fire rate increase and a pretty bad recoil increase, so completely the opposite. Aiming down your sights with this thing is going to be very difficult to control, and you'll probably find yourself hip firing more often. It does come with a red dot sight, which is pretty awkward because keeping your aim on target isn't a thing with this gun, but it isn't a big deal. Once you get used to it, this is also a great MP11 variant. And in third, you probably haven't heard as much about this one, but I have the MP11 SN6. It also has a good fire rate increase, although not as much as the Squeaker, and it also has a recoil nerf, but again, not as much as the Squeaker, although instead of a attached red dot sight, you get a free laser sight, and we were just talking about how it's a good idea to be hip firing these high fire rate weapons, so I would say that a free laser sight is much better to have than a free red dot sight, and overall this variant is just a toned down version of the Squeaker, which is very good to use if you have it. Here we have a couple of other decent variants, and then quite a few that I wouldn't recommend using at all. And now let us move on to the final weapon of the video, the extremely popular ASM1. Everyone is much more aware of these variants because of how competitively viable the ASM1 is, and I'm going to agree with everyone here and say that the Speakeasy is the best variant. We all know it very well. A crazy fire rate increase and a free drum mag at the cost of your long range damage and range. It's a great gun if you just avoid those longer ranges. The Reckless here in second used to be considered better by some people, and well, I'm sure it still is by some people, because when you combine the small fire rate buff on this weapon with the free rapid fire attachment that it has, it does shoot faster than the Speakeasy, and the only downside is a 10% hipfire nerf. But the thing is, the rapid fire attachment was changed in one of the patches for this game, and it now comes with a lot of other nerfs that aren't easy to see, like added range and recoil problems, so I would prefer the Speakeasy, and if you really want, you could put rapid fire on the Speakeasy, but I wouldn't recommend it. Lastly, in third, I have the Competence, which buffs your long range damage, eliminating the potential for a 6-shot kill. I always like it when variants do that. and it does nerf your long-range damage drop-off, but that doesn't matter because of that damage buff. And there's a little trade-off here where you get hipfire in exchange for recoil, but that's also relatively minor. So this is a good variant if you're going to try to get those longer range kills. There are a ton of other good choices here, and I have the Strider down here. It has a good range buff and the same damage buff as the Competence, but that 30% recoil makes it pretty hard to control, so I don't know, I'm not a huge fan, but you might be. And down here, variants I would not recommend. And there we have it. We've covered the main variants you should be aware of for those 4 submachine guns. Normally there'd be a part at the end of this video where we take a look at the camo challenges, but the thing is the SMG camos are all pretty much the same, and they're all fairly straightforward. The camo challenge tip thing was really important for stuff like the Moz and the Mayhem, but there isn't anything mind-blowing to say about these guns that I haven't already said ad nauseum in this series. All the things I can say, like use Exo Hover for strength medals and use Gung Ho for slide kills, I don't need to say again and again, so feel free to check out the AMR9 or SAC3 videos I've already made that talk about the SMG camos, or if you have any questions, just ask away and I'll do my best to answer you. I think that format of question and answer is a lot more efficient than me sitting here for 5 or 10 more minutes trying to predict any possible questions and answering them all in advance. I think we've covered the camo challenges to death in this show, and I mainly want to finish off covering all the variants. Honestly, the most helpful thing I can say to help with the camo challenges is to suggest good variants, and so far I'm really liking this faster format, and hopefully you think it's alright as well. Realistically, it's the only way I can hope to finish this series along with all the other work I have to deal with. Next episode we will be covering all the pistols, the RW1, Atlas 45, MP443 Grok, and PDW. I hope you've learned something about the SMG variants that we covered, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.